In our favorite rocket ship.
So usually all of our
zooming
recordings
through the
start this
sky.
way.
Little Einstein.
I'm sure that's wonderful for the online students.
The online guys, they send some complaints and some death threats to these guys, and
I
they.
never received anything.
I protect you.
I'm not
from them.
dead.
Oh, thank you.
I protect you. I protect you. Okay, well today I wanted Pastor Joey here. He and I just really didn't get to know each other the last 4, 5, 6 months or so, I guess, through what I'm doing in my church with the church planting residency, and my pastor kind of oversees the network that we're a part of, Mission Carolina. He kind of directs what's going on here locally and across the state. And Pastor Joey here, he and his church are a part of Mission Carolina, and he has done a lot of the training. But now Pastor Joey's leading the training. So when we get together one Tuesday a month, Pastor Joey's taking us through kind of a field guide with other pastors on how can we collaborate for city, for a gospel in the city.
Is 121 affiliated with PMBA?
Yeah, we're a PBA church. Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I forgot.
Yes, we are, and so we have several really just associations, affiliations. We are a Southern Baptist Church affiliated with our local and state convention, but we also are affiliated with Mission Carolina, which has a little bit different bend in its mission than a state convention or whatnot would have. So, and I asked Pastor Joey not to prepare on purpose because what we're going to really talk about, he's living and doing and really understands and is coaching and teaching on it. But want to emphasize, and I do have his contact. I had a couple of these left that you gave me last time, and so I've got some information. If you're interested in doing like an internship type thing with him at his church, he got a lot of really neat opportunities, and so I've got all of his info that I'll give to both of you guys. Who you'll have his phone number, email, and his Twitter feed and everything. So, but we're going to talk today and have a conversation really around. There's a group called Christ Together that is kind of the national idea of what Mission Carolina does, and so all across the U.S., cities, churches in specific cities and areas are coming together for the sake of their city, and the target and the goal is what's it going to take. And we covered this the other day. We talked about a movement. What would it take for every man, woman, and child to have repeated opportunity to hear, see, and respond to the gospel in your city. And we discussed how that's happening. It happened through the mobilized church and us equipping and leading in that way. And so I'm going to pull up a graphic here that our groups use a good bit. See here in the middle, it's kind of a target. And kind of wanted Pastor Joey to kind of just talk and have a conversation with us just about the idea of this target, what it implies and means, and then also let you guys kind of ask questions because both of your churches are here in the area. For you two guys who are here, it's what would it be like for your church to join the table, so to speak, and work alongside churches of other denominations, other groups, for a common purpose. And so, Pastor Joey, why don't you kind of walk us kind of through the target, through kind of just some general idea about each piece. And I'm going to have a few questions as we go, as we talk, just kind of like, what different things look like and that sort of thing. But to start us off with saturation, what's the idea behind saturation?
So saturation is really gospel saturation. It is the idea of every man, woman, and child having repeated opportunities to see, hear, and respond to the gospel in whatever area you're in. That circle of influence that your church or that you personally have in your city, in your county, wherever that happens to be. For our church, that's kind of northern Davidson County, southern Forsyth County, is how that plays out for us. And the thought process there is that what God desires is for every man, woman, and child to have an opportunity, and not just our church or your church, but every man, woman, and child. So I need to be closer.
I think some of it may also be her connection too. So yeah, Kelly, he's about as close to the mic as he can be. So if it happens you can't really hear and it keeps going out, this will be recorded. You can always go back and listen. So we're trying to make sure we have everything here for you.
So I mean that's the core of what saturation is. It's gospel saturation. Everybody having an opportunity. When we were in Mission Carolina this past week, we read kind of towards the end of the book of Acts, and it was talking about Paul in Ephesus and everything that was going on, and it was talking about the idea. I think it's in Acts 19 verse 10 that everyone in Asia, everyone in the province of Asia, had an opportunity to hear the word of the Lord. And so that's like an incredible kind of concept that everybody had heard and had an opportunity. And that's what God wants. That's what God wants here. It's what God wants everywhere for everybody.
Yeah, so when we talk about saturation, is this talking about one church working to do this, or a little bit bigger goal?
So for our church, the circle we've drawn for ourselves is about 30,000 people. And that's just a 3-mile radius of where our church building sits. So we're at like 130 on a really great day. 30,000 people is not very realistic for our 130 people to reach 30,000 people with the gospel. And if you want to enlarge that to like the city of Winston, the number just gets tremendously huge. So it's not possible for a small church plant. It's not possible for a huge church like some of the huge churches we have in town, like Winston-Salem First or Calvary. It's impossible to think of one church actually accomplishing this or having any shot at this. It's going to take the Church of Jesus in the area making strives to be able to reach every man, woman, and child.
Yeah. One of the really, really cool things that is happening is that we've got churches of different denominations coming together in different ways we do ministry. At the core theologically, we don't have any, we don't believe Jesus is God, nothing like. We have some very, very core, doctrines that we're really essential on. But the unique thing is that our doctrinal differences is not the target. Like you see that, the doctrinal differences are not really listed. The saturation part, if we can agree on that, if we can agree that every man, woman, and child needs to hear the gospel, if we can agree on that, then we can work together in certain capacities to really see this happen.
Right.
So kind of walk us through the idea of mobilization, because this is, you're talking about a network of churches who are coming together for the common target or goal of gospel saturation. So what does it look like for my local church to be a part of this with the idea of mobilization?
I think it kind of has to start kind of even before your church. It has to start with the individual. It has to start with each person realizing that I am part of the mission, that I am part of every man, woman, and child having an opportunity to hear and to respond. Whatever God's doing in the world, that He wants all believers to be a part of what He's doing. That obviously, every believer is a missionary. That's where it starts. It starts with mobilizing each person in each church, and that's a tremendous task, especially I think in America, it's a tremendous task because we just don't get that. Our people don't get that. Our people have been used to a culture of church where quite frankly, that's kind of that pastor's job, that's the missionary's job. My job is to show up and put my butt in the seat and to just simply give and to volunteer and keep the nursery every once in a while, and then check out for the week and do my own thing. So it starts there with really having understanding on the personal level that I'm responsible in my own circle, that God's given me a platform, a group of people that He's given me responsibility over, that they would hear the gospel or see the gospel displayed in my life and then have an opportunity to respond to it. So it starts there with each individual person, and then can move to the church level where we have a people who are really about that task. Past that, then it moves into, if we have multiple churches moving together, then we've got a real shot at every man, woman, and child in a certain area.
Yeah, so the kind of church working together kind of works its way both from the top up and the bottom down. It's your people, everyday people And as that happens, that creates that culture in your church of that everyone's a missionary type ideas, and even it changes how you structure your church as well, and your DNA and whatnot. But then also when you get to the churches working together, then they're also responsible to help make sure that it's trickling down to the rest of the people. So it's kind of this flux going back and forth that the pastor's really in the middle of that, encouraging this, but also bringing in and saying, here's how it's done here, and really working together. Because some churches, we've had a few who said, we need help being mobilized. We don't know how to do this. And so we've had some older established churches even come and start meeting with us and chatting with us about, okay, so what can we do? We've done it this way, and we haven't really done anything for our community, so help us. And so we can kind of share what our churches are doing, so to speak, and whatnot.
And then that starts with the leader. Then in that case, it's got to start with the leader. The leader has got to just have his heart wrecked by, the mission of God. It's got to start there, and then him being willing to instead of bending to the whims of the deacons or of the squeaky wheel in the church, but to be really committed to his personal mission of equipping the saints for mobilization.
And let's talk now about kind of transformation, because there's, I guess, kind of two levels. There's a personal transformation idea and also a transformation of culture and mindset for the church. So on those kind of personal levels, what are we looking for when we're talking about, because the whole goal is gospel saturation. That's the goal, and these four components help mobilize, help get to that point. So let's discuss transformation. What are we really talking about when we're talking about transformation?
Transformation, we're talking about, that's what the gospel does. Anywhere Jesus shows up, things are changed. Wherever Jesus shows up, dead things come to life. So transformation is first in the heart of the individual. It's first the work of the gospel in that life. If you kind of begin to think about kind of the people, if you have people in your life that and we all should have people in life that we're praying for, that are close to us but far from God. And we think about those people. When the gospel comes to bear on their life, something should be changing in their life. Something should be changing. And normally we're able to see that better than they're able to see that. That's probably the plank in our own eye kind of problem. So we get to see kind of where the gospel needs to penetrate in their lives. It needs to continue to penetrate in our lives as well, and to see the heart of that individual changed by the gospel. So that's the heart of transformation. As it expands out into a place, into a geography, then we begin to think about, what are the areas. If I'm thinking about if the gospel came to bear on my community, and the effects of sin and the effects of the guilt were wiped away, what would it look like? What would change in my community? And when you begin to, as a church or as a group of churches, look at that, you begin to get an idea of actually what the strongholds of sin are in your community. And where the problem areas are. And so for our church, we've been in a process of doing that last year, of really taking a look at, okay, what would change if all of a sudden the gospel came to bear in our community? And we found that, there were a lot of big things, obviously. There's family issues. We look and we see addiction issues, especially around probably more of the sins that are secret sins that are done on your computer screen and things like that. So when we're looking at that, when we're looking at transformation, we're looking to see what are some of the things that if God came to work in this community and the gospel really came to bear on us, what would change? And from that, then we've been as a church been trying to work backwards from that, and it affects it affects what we're preaching on, it affects what we're teaching, it affects how we're discipling our people, how we're teaching them. All of that begins to become affected as we're looking at that, in terms of seeing transformation happen, because it needs to happen in our lives first. God's got to deal with us on addiction. God's got to deal with us on secret sin before we're able to take that message to the rest of the community.
Which one's best to talk about next? Collaboration or multiplication? I'll let you kind of.
I think collaboration. I think if we're going to talk about, so we move from mobilizing people in a community, in an area, in a city, mobilizing people, knowing that they have a mission for every man, woman, and child, to begin seeing transformation not only happen in their lives, but to begin to see it happen in other lives, and what it can do for a community. I think the next place we have to look is at collaboration, because without collaborating with other churches, it's not going to happen. It's affecting the city is not going to happen. One of the things that we talk about in some of our training in Mission Carolina is that our goal is really zero. Our goal is that every man, woman, and child would hear, such that there are 0 people that have not heard, there are 0 people that have not been transformed, there are 0 hungry people, there are 0 broken families, there are everywhere you look that the goal is really 0. Obviously that's a tremendous goal, and so there's no way to even begin that work without churches coming together to collaborate for the city. Now, when we come to collaborate, churches collaborate all the time. We'll collaborate. Billy Graham will come in. We'll collaborate for just for a few months for a crusade. That used to happen a lot. Or we'll collaborate around a certain event in the community, or we'll collaborate around a mercy ministry. Our community has a kind of like a food pantry kind of thing that most of the churches collaborate around. But that's not the collaboration we're talking about. We're talking about a collaboration that would, where each pastor would begin to open up his heart in such a way that being territorial is no longer a big issue. Because if we talk about working together for an extended period of time, it becomes very difficult in the church world because we all have our sheep, and we all have our budget, and we all have our building, and we all become very kind of squirrely when we begin to think about if I'm going to open up my people to see your church, and I know your church is much better than my church at doing this, this, and this, are my people going to leave? It becomes a very scary thing for pastors, and so you have to kind of get past a point in the heart of the pastor to be able to say, I'm willing to take the risk because of the gospel, because of seeing gospel, the desire to see gospel saturation in my community. I'm willing to take the risk for what it means for me. And that's a tremendous step. But when we can get over that hurdle, then good things can begin to happen, where we are establishing a long-term relationship as churches, to be able to then do things like mercy ministry, to do different types of things that make sense for the city to go after the city for every man, woman, and child. But before you get there, it's a hard work.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I get to, as part of my residency with 121, I get to chat with other pastors and kind of lay some of the vision and talk about some collaboration. I actually had coffee with the pastor this morning about it, and just kind of explaining, and at first you don't get any kind of really big pushback. Oh, we like the idea of collaboration, but then we start getting into and because I know Pastor Will, I know that if you came up and said, hey Will, we need to have about 50 people, can you give us 50 people for 6 months? And if our church is about 110, 120, around that much, that's almost half of our group. You say, I need those for 6 months. I know what Pastor Will would say. He would say, well, when? Because his vision is beyond just what our church is doing. But it's from years of him understanding the necessity for collaboration. So when it's talking about collaborating churches working together, what are some, if you have any examples of what this has looked like, either for your church and how you may collaborate with some others, or what you've seen in some other Mission Carolina churches, or even outside that have really done this? Do you have any good examples to kind of share of, like, okay, here's one way that they collaborated?
For our church, we're about 6 years into a church plant, and this is something we wanted from the very beginning of who we were. but we had absolutely no idea about how to go about it. And really the heart of this target is really the heart of who we were before we didn't have this target and we didn't have any kind of handles to put on it. So we very quickly crept back into what we knew, which was basically just planning a service. So now we're coming back around the last couple of years, coming back around to this. And for us as a church, we're involved in Mission Carolina. We're also involved in a church planting group in Davidson County, which is beginning the work of collaboration. It's a group that's very open to collaborating, whereas most of the existing churches are not open to collaborating. I think maybe it's because as church planters we have pretty much nothing to lose, and all the existing churches have a lot to lose, and so we find very little traction in the existing churches in our area. But among the younger church plants, everyone's fairly open to one another and needs each other almost in many ways. And so we've begun collaborating quarterly, just having a worship service together quarterly. It's kind of just a baby step in many ways. And at the worship service, we're collecting. This past time we collected cleaning supplies for the local shelter, and so it's just a really small collaboration. And the pastors meet together. We meet together once a month. So it's a very small collaboration, but it's a start.
Yeah.
It's a start.
Well, it's building a culture. It's building a culture of collaboration among not just your leaders in the churches, but also your people. When they know that every quarter, every 3 or 4 months, they're going to be worshiping with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other churches, and saying, "Hey, we're it's a different pastor preaching, it's a different band leading, or we're raising money not for ourselves this time, or whichever it is." I think that kind of helps. We talked several weeks ago about fostering a disciple-making culture in your church. With each person owning the idea that I'm sharing the gospel and discipling someone to go and replicate and do the same. And the same kind of thing when you're talking about collaboration. Because even inside a church, you can have one program against the other. Oh, the kids ministry is growing faster than the youth ministry, and so they get more budget than I do, and they get more time with the pastor, and yada yada, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, our kids and our teens are probably in the same families. Maybe we should just focus on the family and kind of get over ourselves, so to speak. Yeah. So let's talk about multiplication. Okay. Let's kind of round it off with a discussion on what the idea, because when we talk about every man, woman, and child is our target, that gospel saturation there. How does the idea of multiplication take effect into that?
So if we've got if we're aiming at every man, woman, and child, and we've got mobilized people who are about the work of being a missionary, who are seeking and seeing transformation happen as we collaborate with other churches, we're all of a sudden going to have a lot of people. Well, we're going to have people coming to Christ. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So we are going to have a need for more churches. So more churches are going to naturally have to be planted out of that. So the multiplication in some ways is the idea of multiplying churches because there's a need for the churches in that area. It could start that way with the wheel turning that way, or it could start turning the opposite way, which would be the idea of us as a group of pastors, now that we're collaborating, being able to look at our city or look at our community and be able to say, okay, these are the areas where there's not a gospel witness. Obviously, in America, that's kind of weird to kind of even think about because we got churches on every corner, it seems like. But we all know that many of those churches sometimes don't even have a gospel witness, which is a very sad thing. What we don't necessarily see, though, is we're not looking sometimes for the underserved population in the community, like a community that needed a Hispanic church that didn't have that was not serving that kind of population. That we begin to target certain areas, and then we begin to raise up either from within or call from outside someone who's qualified to plant, and then together plant churches, and that would be a huge thing together across denominational lines, across styles, across people groups to come together for the good of the city, for the good of seeing every man, woman, and child, then plant churches together and fund them together.
So what you're hitting at is that in the gospel it's possible for a purely organ hymn independent Baptist church to partner with a non-denominational full band missional community style church with no Sunday school as the others, and even with, we can even throw in a Presbyterian somewhere in there. So you're saying it's actually possible that could happen if the target was, if we could agree on the same target, that we can give resources and people and effort and stuff into that. Would you say that that's possible?
Yeah, that is possible, and through knowing just of greater things that are happening in the group, the network we're in, Mission Carolina, and even in Christ Together Natural, I know places like Austin, Texas, and places like Charleston, South Carolina are actually seeing that happening.
Yeah.
Are seeing churches from different denominations, different styles, come together for the good of the city and to plant churches together, which is tremendous. And if you which gives hope, I think, for smaller places like Winston-Salem and places like that for us to see that happen. And it's not a quick road, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think those places have been working together on this for a while, and I think it takes time to build that trust of collaboration before we see that happen.
Yeah.
But it sure is possible.
Well, the cool thing is, we are starting to see it happen. There are stories now of it happening, and it's one of those is new for North America. It's a new idea. We've been very territorial for decades, maybe even centuries. But I want each of you to kind of think through, as we've discussed all this, you're thinking through. I didn't want Joey to come to just do a pitch for Mission Carolina. That's not the point. The point is, I highly respect and appreciate what the group is doing. Each different mission agencies kind of have their niche. They kind of really focus well. Some are just really great at assessing and resourcing planters, and they are stellar at it. They do that. They're really, really bad at follow up or something. There may be something they're really lacking. So each agency kind of has its specialty. And for Mission Carolina and Christ Together, the broader picture, their specialty is this. I think the collaboration piece and keeping on that target. That's really their specialty, and that's why my church has been a part of it, and I get to help do some things with the group. And like I said, I had coffee with the pastor this morning, just kind of cast the vision and talk about it, and say, hey, here's how we can work together to help your church, and we're here for you. We're not here to build up our people. This church is actually 4 times the size of my church that we're in now, and it's like, if you need people, let us know. It's that kind of conversation that we're having. So each of you kind of think through a good question you would ask. And Derek, I was as we were talking, and I know your heart is kind of in the revitalizing, type leadership role. Derek, what would be the question that you would ask, being at a established Southern Baptist church, running the kind of standard programs and models, and you're the youth pastor there as well. What's something that you would want to know from a group who's trying to collaborate and do this, and you're thinking revitalizing even your church as a youth pastor? Like, what's something that you would want to know personally? I've been curious about that as we've been talking.
Yeah. So I've had 3+ years to study our culture in the church, see the spiritual aptitude of the people, what their focus is, what their desires are. There are great people, they have great hearts, but they've missed it. They think, and I don't say this to discredit them, and I just want to be very careful that I'm not bashing them. I say it because it's a genuine concern of mine. They think that just because we give to the cooperative program or we give to the local food bank, that is making disciples. I think they've missed that it's a way of making disciples, but their involvement has to be beyond just putting in a couple bucks a week. So how do you get your people to see beyond giving as a means of being the only way of making disciples, and showing them that you need to be out. Go to East Oaks Outreach Ministry and converse with the people that are coming there for the food and make disciples through that. How do you get them to that point from here to here?
That's the $1 million question.
I was just about to say, if you can answer that question, you win the prize.
If I can do that, I get to write books and
That's right.
and give 10% of millions of dollars to the to the kingdom. You know, I wish I had a great answer for that. I think for us, here's what we're trying to do. That's basically what I've got. We're in a different environment. You know, we're a young church plant, but we do have people coming. We do end up with people coming. The thing about planning a church, since this is a church planting class, the thing about planting a church is when you plant a church, you attract the crazy disgruntled people from every other church in your area. Which is extremely problematic. You wish that you could just not have those people and just work on people who are coming to faith, because the people who come to faith, they get this because they don't know anything else. They don't know any other way. They don't know that you're not supposed to tell other people about Jesus. No one's told them that yet. Somehow all of our other people, someone along the way told them, now don't tell anybody about Jesus, because that's the wrong thing. Just give money and just help out with your kids, right? And I think it starts with in the people who have been in church for a while, and it started with us. That, I mean, it starts from the top. It starts from a pastor who is not only willing to begin to teach this, but beginning to be willing to live this, and that is a radically different paradigm for most pastors, not just most congregation members. So now I've got to live that I'm personally responsible for every man, woman, and child. And how does that come to bear in my life? And how do I use my life as a witness in my community? And how do I begin to see that happen in relationships, whether it's in my kid's sports place or whether it's in my neighborhood or whatever? It's got to start there. So it starts with the pastor, and without I know you're not in a lead pastor role. So if you're in a youth pastor role, it starts with you with your youth, which they're so much easier and more pliable to do this with. I remember those days when I was a youth pastor. But if it's going to capture the heart of the adults, it's got to capture the heart of the lead pastor. It's really got to start there. And then I think it's a beginning of him now being transparent with his life, with the change that's happened in him, and so it needs to affect your preaching. So you've got to you've got to be able to, when you're preaching and trying to help people, guide them, you've got to be able to tell the story from your own life. Yeah, when I was out in the community today, last week, this is what I saw in this person's life, and this is how I'm trying to, and being really transparent that you're just as messy at it as everybody else would be, because if you seem like you're perfect at it, then if you've got to set the bar low for people in terms of being sent. You set the bar high for the gospel. We talked about this the other day. You set the bar high for the gospel, but you set the bar low for being sent out, because it's going to be messy in people's lives. I wish I had let's do this program. We tried. You talked about that you're going through Multiply. We thought, okay, we're going to get everybody the book Multiply, and we're going to preach through it. We're going to preach through the book. So we spent 27 weeks preaching through the book, through the Multiply book. And we gave everybody a copy of the book. It really didn't to try to help say, okay, this is how you could do this with your friends. You go through this book with your friends, and 3 people did it with their friends, of the whole church. Yeah. So
it'd be a very slow, because I've worked in a very similar church environment, and you get a lot of people who they love Jesus, they love His Word, they have a true, genuine heart for lost people to come to Christ. They really do. So we agree that, and they would agree, oh yes, we need every man, woman, child to hear the gospel. They completely get it, and they've just been discipled to think differently in a lot of ways, either intentionally discipled that way by someone who says, oh, we don't have to, or it's just been, there's a lack of something in their discipleship. But I would say that for our church, we have the gospel communities that spread out. So our elders are now pouring a lot of time into the leaders and entrusting us to disseminate it down. And so, like for our group, with our we got about 8 or 9 in our community. We meet on Wake Forest campus, and so we all the time are talking about making disciples. We're talking about the God. We're talking about our personal growth. We're also we every week we ask how we've listed unsaved friends' names. We all have listed 1 or 2 names. We write them down. I keep them in a notebook and take it every time. We say, okay, how is Maddie doing? Did you get to hang out with her this past weekend, or when's the last time you saw her? And so then the girl in our group is saying, oh yeah, I got to have dinner with her last Saturday, and it opened up. We ended up talking about this, which led to the gospel. And so it's just constantly talking through it. So as a leader, it's just me simply always bringing it up. And so like in an established church, it's starting to get some of your Sunday school teachers on board. It's getting your deacons on board and saying, hey, deacons, who in the church are you pouring into and encouraging them to share the gospel, and you're taking them along with you. And then you grab some of the Sunday school teachers, and you pastor, you're walking along with them, discipling them, and then they disseminate it out. So I think it's kind of where it has to be, but that's a very slow thing, because it could take you a couple years to get one person to really catch on to that. Or you could find that one influential person in the church who just gets it, and they help everyone else to see it. We've had a little bit of a internet thing. It's not affecting our recording, but anyways, we can ignore this for right now. Well, Kelly is gone. Our whole Blackboard thing is shut down.
Recording in progress.
Oh, there it comes. Maddie, what would you want to ask about related to this?
In terms of your overall, like, Mission Carolina substance, I mean, you said you have areas that you're good at. What would you say that your weakest area would be?
For Mission Carolina?
Yeah. Not in the sense of, like, I want to know, like, what I can bash you about. Just, because I'm totally all about that.
You can go ahead and do that. Weakest area.
Funding.
Yeah, we're not about funding. We're really not about funding. So if you're looking at us as a church planting organization that's going to really benefit you in terms of financial support, and even also like kind of like a best practices kind of thing, that's really not what we're aiming at. We're depending on other people for you to get that knowledge from other people. So if you looked at like the guys from Seacoast, who are, I can't remember, for some reason it's not what network they're with. There's one network where they're all about launching big. They're all about, your first day is going to be big, and they help you put together, all these resources about how to market and how to make sure you have a great big launch day. ARC, that's Associated Related Churches. That's ARC is who does that. That's we're not about that. Some places do, some denominations especially do a great job with funding. North Carolina Baptists do a fair job at funding. They kept us alive for about 6 months. So that they can they do a good job with funding. That's not us. We're really laser focused in on every man, woman, and child,
Right.
and resourcing churches to do that.
Now, in terms of future thinking, do you have any intention of taking Mission Carolina and expanding it to Mission North Carolina, Mission Georgia, Mission Virginia? Or is it
That's actually happening, and I'm not my pay grade isn't high enough for to be in on that conversation, but that stuff's happening there. I know that we have mission. So Mission Carolina was started in South Carolina, and what I was part of was Plant NC, which started in North Carolina, and Plant NC merged with Mission Carolina to encompass both North and South Carolina, because we had a very like-minded focus, and so our church was one of the first churches with 121 to help to be in Plant NC. And now we've also got some churches that are in Roanoke, Virginia area, and some in northern Georgia that are all part of Mission Carolina. So there is actually a, it's grown past, and then in terms of the larger, the Christ Together thing is is becoming like a larger network, it seems, for us. Because you've got Christ Together Austin, they're working in Orlando with a group of churches in Florida,
Philadelphia.
Where was
Jackson,
Will?
Mississippi.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Chicago.
You kind of hear all over where things are popping up. There's a group in is it Mission Orange County, I think,
Yeah.
in California. So yeah, it's kind of a growing kind of collaboration. It's not a tight network like an Acts 29 would be, where it's a very top down tight network kind of thing. It's a little bit more of a collaboration. In
It's
some
really
ways.
relationally driven in a lot of ways. Like there's no application for a church. It's we've had coffee with this pastor for a couple of months now, and he's kind of ready to start. And so now I've got my former church has now come to the table where I was a youth pastor at 3 years ago. They've been coming fairly regularly. They've only missed one or two here and there, but they want to know how to. And so it's going to take them some time to get used to the ideas of collaborating, to start bringing their church alongside of, okay, here's some efforts we can collaborate around. Talk about Christ Together in Mission Carolina. The cool thing is Christ Together approached Mission Carolina and its leadership and said, hey, will you come help us because we like what you're doing. We want to basically have the same ideas. So let's work together and kind of see. And so that's how I got Pastor Will into Christ Together now. So he's kind of in both, and they're eventually one day they'll probably just be the same kind of a thing. Like we may be the North Carolina, South Carolina region of Christ Together, so to speak. But they're actually two separate organizations when it comes down on paper. But we had such the same vision. It's like, well, why don't we just become one of the same? And so the Christ Together is kind of like that national platform where, like, this target comes from that. The training that we're doing, our group is Mission Carolina Triad that gets together. But the training that we're going through with Pastor Joey here was written by guys from Christ Together, by some from their team. And but it's one of those things where it's really a beautiful collaborative effort. We've got churches that are in Texas that are giving good amounts of money to help fund churches in South Carolina. They're not really caring so much where it's happening. It's let's do what it takes to have every man, woman, child in North America. And so they're going to take care of Austin, Texas. We're going to try to take care of the Triad, and other groups are going to take care of their places. But
Recording in
we're
progress.
all trying to work towards the same thing. So.
Now, in terms of collaboration with other church planting groups, you guys have heard of Harvest, right? With Vertical Church and stuff like that. What are your overall kind of like maybe off the board? What's your opinion of them? Because I've heard some things. I'm a part of Salem Chapel, and we've joined up with them.
I don't know a lot about them.
Okay.
I haven't had a lot of exposure. I've heard about them, but I don't really have a lot of exposure at all.
Because they have a lot of, I think, 3 or 4 different churches launching within the next 8 or 9 months in the general area.
Really?
So they have
High Point. Dave was telling me.
Yeah.
Some of the other places,
Right.
but it's very similar. Harvest.
They're very, very aggressive.
Yeah, it's one of those where they're helping multiply churches, and so like for a Mission Carolina
Wonderful.
thing, there would be no interference. It would just be, hey, let's just keep doing what we're doing. How can we help you? How can
That's
we help
right.
Harvest do what it's doing? And so,
Yeah.
like I actually had Dave was the one I had coffee with this morning,
Oh, nice.
just kind of saying like, hey, he and I were catching up personally, but I was telling him about Mission Carolina support, and he's like, oh yeah, they got I think. High Point, there's one in North Raleigh, there's one in I think South Charlotte or something like that. Hickory, there's one in Hickory. And so he's got that network, and I was kind of sharing like that's exactly what we're doing as well. And so kind of planning some ideas for him how, right here in Winston-Salem, there's not another Harvest Church, but there are churches that have the same mentality as a Harvest Church of we're here for the gospel, for multiplying. And so we're, so it's really, it's crossing all these kind of blurry denominational lines, and it's one of those where we have such a bigger goal than building a denomination.
Yeah.
We have the goal of every man, woman, child.
Right.
It just amazes me when I sit back and look at it, because I didn't even realize all I knew in terms of experience with these new generational church plants especially I lived in Florida, in between Orlando and Tampa, and so Lakeland is very much known for literally having a church on every corner. You will not drive maybe a block or two without seeing a Catholic, a Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, non-denom, or a new church plant. And so, like you said earlier, those new church plants got a reputation for taking all the disgruntled members and compiling them. So I never had a good experience with them, at least, watching from the outside. Then I got up here, and it's just like this entire thing is just like exploding, because all I hear about is, people are really turning their minds around to church planting. We're seeing, 4 churches from just one, organization opening up new churches here. We just had a pastor from Salem leave to go to Michigan to launch a new church. They just launched like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
That was the youth pastor, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, it's just it amazes me how quickly this is going and how many people seem to be jumping on board amidst a lot of my cultural tendencies where I've grown up and seen people very, very apathetic towards doing anything.
And I think a lot of that, is, to some degree, church planting is, for a long time, the sexy thing was to be a youth pastor. And I think in some ways, church planting has overtaken that for young guys. I think there's that, but then I also think, though, that there's obviously a move that God is doing, and I think in some ways He's doing it outside of the established church, because of the tendency of the established church to be so anti-change and set in its ways that He's just rerouting around in America, which I think is both a wonderful thing and a difficult thing, because now we're going to have many churches just tank and die, and we see that in our area. We were the beneficiary of that for a little while. We were in a building of a church that died. They just signed their building over to us. It got too small for us, and so we handed it off to someone else. It's a wonderful thing, because we in no way have enough churches to meet the need.
It's funny you say that. My dad, he's a pastor down in Georgia, in Marietta. Grace Fellowship down there in Snellville. His Dad's church it's dying. That's just all there is to it. And Johnny Hunt, his church was going to take over because they're only like 20 minutes away. Well, that fell through. Then a church just around the corner fell through. They were going to take over, that fell through. Well, this church decided that they were going to collaborate with Whole Road, my dad's church, and they have a house church that's launched in Marietta with 40 people. And they said they have like 20 something. There's just not enough room in the house anymore. We need to. So they've been talking, and it's official. They're planning that they're going to take the building, and they're going to keep my dad on for a year unless it's just a good fit. Then they'll keep him on permanently. I don't know to what extent, but it was when I went. That's when I went down there that weekend. It was so cool to hear that, because it gives me hope that I think traditional churches or established churches, they have their place, especially over in the Walnut Cove, Germantown area.
Yeah.
That's just that mindset. But when it comes to places like Marietta and Atlanta, you need people with a vision who, for the glory of God, for the good of the people in that community, that isn't necessarily like the traditional ways. And I think it's so cool. And that's what I love about this course. That's what I love about Piedmont too, is its focus not on being a traditional school or sending out traditional ways through the students, but sending out disciple makers.
Right.
And however that works it's between God and the student. And I do have one more question, and it should be brief, but for the benefit of Matt and I here, what can we do to get involved with Mission Carolina or with Christ Together or whatever it would be?
Well, we meet monthly, and I think I would assume that we were definitely open to students coming.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything different from Will. So we meet monthly, and right now what we're doing is, for the next 8 months, we've just started in a kind of this learning collaboration, a learning community where we're actually fleshing this stuff out. So we just spent 2 weeks, two months, two meetings on saturation, and the next 2 meetings we're going to talk about mobilization. So we'll begin and we'll just go around the wheel. So that's actually what we're doing with our group. We have some folks who've been for a while and are very committed between us and 121 and Tapestry Church, who've been around for a good little while. Then there's a lot of people who are just kind of coming to the table with us, and so it's a good opportunity for us to kind of to understand this better together. So I mean that would be an easy way to, if you don't have class during that time frame on that particular day, I think is the second Monday of every month, and we actually meet here on your campus. So that would be convenient for you.
The next one is May 11th, and we do 9:30 to 11:30. So it's the second Monday of the month, 9:30 to 11:30. And like you were saying, we have a lot of. So if you came in now, you wouldn't be the only new ones. I actually had two of the Revo guys have been trying to come and work for the schedule, but I'm sending them notes today.
Really?
From that, and then they want to plan to be for the next.
Nathan's?
Yeah, Nathan and Wes.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm good friends with both of them.
That's
So
good.
so he actually emailed me. He's like, "Hey, sorry I missed, but can I get the notes so he can get
That's
caught
cool.
up?" So
Very cool.
I would say, Derek, especially you being on staff at your church and in this transition time, for you personally, it would be good to be a part of. But I think it also really benefits your church. And then if you're a part, and then a new pastor comes at whatever time, you kind of say, "Hey, we've got this collaboration." I think that would be good. And then for Matt, just encouraging, Dave to be a part. You can come along with him as you're, just really, almost like a unofficial intern. You know what I mean? Like he and I actually talked about internship stuff today, and how we can kind of strengthen that partnership that we have with him in that way. And it'd be good for you to kind of see those underlying how it is working, so that when you are sent to wherever you're going, you kind of see that. And well, excellent. Well, Kelly here has been saying that she really is looking forward to when she comes up to get involved with a place that can really guide and help them, and especially if one is already working with Hispanics or has a good mix. So we're going to be connecting her with several groups and churches that we got. And so yeah, Kelly, when you come up, we'll have a whole host of people for you to talk to, especially around the Mission Carolina table, because there will be several churches that have ministries in that area. So all right, well, that is all for today.